another Power Talk session at the WIEF Roundtable in Kota Kinabalu 2020. I'm with Faroze Nadar, Executive Director, United Nations Global Compact Malaysia. First off, could you explain a little bit about the UN Global Compact as a movement of sustainable companies and stakeholders to create the world we all want to?
Right. So the UNGC, the short form for United Nations Global Compact, was created about 20 years ago by the then SecGen Kofi Annan, who wanted to have a private sector focused initiative to move towards becoming sustainable. So before then, of course, there was no such thing as the SDGs. So we started with something called the 10 principles, in which private sector would voluntarily sign up that we want to adhere to, revolving around environmental policies, human rights, corruption, and governance. Then in 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals were launched, we adopted that as our calling card for private sector to align towards. So we merged both the 10 principles and the 17 SDGs. So what we do is that we advocate private sector to realign their business strategies, to bring in sustainability factors for them to be better businesses. So we are a private sector membership platform. So globally, we have about 10,000 members. And how we operate via local networks in over 60 countries now. So the Global Compact Network Malaysia is the local network for Malaysia. We localize global programs, and we also bring Malaysian programs to the global setting.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to follow up to the answers just now that you have given. This year, somewhere in that small Alps town called Davos, the theme was about shareholder capitalism versus stakeholder capitalism. So I just want to put that into practical reality, because Global Compact has been looking at that since the inception. That's why the Compact was made.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But, years on, we're still at the level where a lot of people are still thinking about shifting from just profit to sustainability.
Right. Why is that the case?
No, where do you think it is now? Because that's the fact, right?
Right. Well, this being sustainable has always started off from a voluntary basis. It has not gone into a regulatory basis. Only now we see it starting to move towards more of a demand by businesses. So at least if you look at the Malaysian context, we started off regulating the sustainability reports of public listed companies. But very soon, we will see the financial sector starting to reshape around this, because Bank Negara has said now you have to start to think about climate change risk and things like that. So the non-voluntary measures are starting to get in place. So if I were to say where we are right now, I think we are in a hybrid position where people, yes, say it's important, but it's not important enough that it has to be mandatory. So we are still in that middle ground.
So in between, on the left, President Donald Trump, on the right, Greta Thunberg, where do you think the Global Compact lies?
So I would say we are the neutral part, right? Because we want to be pragmatic as well. I think there's many initiatives that shouts that you have to be better and things like that, but it doesn't really move the needle, right? So we also got to marry the reality with the idealism, right? But we understand, private sector is an incentive-driven organization. Therefore, for them to embark on things, we've got to answer pertinent questions of what's the incentive, what's the carrot and sticks. So while we want to marry being sustainable is important, but we cannot not take in the importance of business growth as well. So we try to marry the both. But in terms of the Donald Trump side, we believe that immaterial of what leaders say, private sector are sovereign enough to make better decisions on your own.
All right. Okay, understood. With Sabah's Vision 2025, resource-based manufacturing location of choice as a target in Asia, there's bound to be like explosion of investment development, like mega development projects, What can Sabah do to ensure that all this explosion of development, rapid urbanization, industrialization, and business ventures are done responsibly by aligning their strategies and operations with the 10 principles of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption? In short, I'm asking you, just like your first session at the round table, how do you make profit-taking initiatives to have at the center at least the thinking of sustainability.
Right. I think it's important in this context to understand what is the true cost of investment. Most of the time, we look it from a capitalist lens, right? If I put in X amount of dollars, what is my Y amount of dollars that I take back? But if you look at the true cost, we have to count in the externalities of if we do an investment A, what is the true cost from the environmental perspective, from a social perspective. We must be able to peel back all the underlying factors. Now, taking into the environmental, social, governance factors when we factor in what is the actuality of the investment. Because a lot of times, when we make a short-term thing, it's great at that point of time, but the long-term benefit is quite negative. So this is where I think in a developing context for Sabah, there's a lot of opportunities to learn from other developing cities and things like that. But more importantly is how do we tap a sustainable source in terms of the growth, right? So as I mentioned, energy is a big thing for industrialization. How can Sabah tap into the Sarawak grid, for example, to pull sustainable hydropower to support this, which also brings the tariff lower and also increase profitability for the investors. So I would say that Sabah needs to understand what is the true cost of investment before embarking on a yes or no decisions.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just a short one before we end. A follow-up to that. It's easier to look at profit and loss from the current financial accounting standards and practice.
Sure.
Because you look at the profit and loss account, it's very clear. You look at PATAMI, you look at EBITDA. But this doesn't measure what we are talking about in terms of sustainability radar and metrics.
Yep. Yep. So yes, so this is a discipline that is evolving, right? There are many different standards that are being introduced right now. How this can be factored into a more P&L we call indicators, right? So there's something called the SASB, which focus on what investors want to look at in terms of sustainable decisions. So there is no right or wrong answer at this point of time because sustainability means different things to different people at this point of time. But it is something that is being looked at, and I think the finance industry will pioneer this simply because they have to get this into their sheets. Yep.
Okay. So it's not just about going to be the center of manufacturing, but the subsequent ecosystem also needs to move. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Faroze Nadar, Executive Director, United Nations Global Compact, Malaysia, for Power Talk, WIEF Roundtable, Kota Kinabalu 2020.